Dear younger me, to really understand yourself and what you want, sometimes you have to just walk away from it all, even if people are telling you you're crazy. If something's meant to be in your life, you'll find your way back to it. The journey might take a while, though. Just be patient and trust the universe and yourself. Easier said than done. I know. Hi, I'm sick of scripting. So I'm just going to tell you why I quit making the podcast. There's a couple main reasons. Money. Felt like I had completed what I set out to do. I told my story, helped people tell their stories, felt good about it, and it's time to do new things. I'm at a new point in my life. A lot of things have changed. I am a mom now. I am married and have a house, and I'm 35, and not that any of that means you have to do new things, but I just feel like I'm in a new era, and the way that I've figured out what I want that to be is by looking at my past ones, and instead of thinking about all the things that went wrong with them, really reflecting on what I loved about each of the things that I devoted myself to for certain periods of my life. I talked about music and I talked about writing, and, when it comes to podcasting, I absolutely adored learning more about audio production, audio editing. Sound design was amazing. I spent so many hundreds of hours creating my own music, writing scripts that would go hand in hand with the music that I wrote, recreating the sounds of my high school band, sitting behind a drum kit and trying to play a bad impression of Dave Grohl and trying to remember the songs I wrote in high school. I mean, making Dear Young Rocker was the best creative project I've done so far. But as much as I absolutely adored making it independently for myself when I had time after work and on the weekends, when I was fortunate enough to be picked up by a network, I was bought by How Stuff Media, and a few days later they were bought by iHeartRadio. So Dear Young Rocker ended up getting released by iHeartRadio for 4 seasons, and I don't want to complain about that, but I was a little nobody. I had no ability to negotiate a big contract, and so once I was signed up for this contract, I had to release an episode every single week. I had to do a lot of pre-production. I had to do marketing. I had to make promotions and advertisements. And I later learned that the amount of things I was doing between creating my own music, doing sound design and engineering, and I had some help by some people who were working on a bunch of other shows, so they didn't have that much time for me, so I ended up doing a lot of that myself. My point is, I was doing the job of what's common for at least 3 people, if not 5 or more. I've worked on other podcasts where I've done just one of those jobs and gotten paid the same amount to do one of those things, just hosting, just scripting, just audio engineering, that I was getting paid to do like all 5 of those jobs plus all this marketing. And so I just couldn't make that work. When it came out to like dollars an hour, it was like less than minimum wage. But I was so busy, I didn't have time to work another job. I just could not make it work. I couldn't be like, hey, job, occasionally I'll have to have days where I cannot work at all because I'm working on my podcast, like when the season's about to launch. That doesn't work. So once I got married and wanted to buy a house and found out I was pregnant and the bills are just increasing, I couldn't make it work anymore, and I decided to take a step back. I did my best to negotiate. It wasn't going to happen. They didn't have the money. And another thing I'll add is when I started this podcast independently, I'd made 8 short episodes that I thought were perfect to get people to listen. After signing the contract, I was told I needed 12 episodes that all had to be 30 minutes long. So I had to make hours. I mean, it worked out to like, I don't know, 100 or more hours more work. And the thing about rewriting something that's scripted is once you change the story, you kind of have to go back and change everything else, because you're like, oh, the beginning and end of this episode now, this episode that was 15 minutes, you can't just add on without changing all the next things, like, you know, things that happen to the main character or another character in the story. And it is a nonfiction story, but it still applies as if it's fictional. My point is I had to rewrite and redo everything instead of just sort of touch up what I had made independently. I had to redo a lot of the music for copyright reasons. So anyway, I was just doing hundreds of hours of work, and it was amazing, wonderful, fulfilling work, especially when I was helping other people tell their stories. That was awesome, being a writing coach and hearing these great stories and helping people feel fulfilled. But that ended up being, you know, the network was kind of like, well, you're doing less work now. And I'm like, no, I'm doing more work, honestly, teaching other people how to do this really hard thing. And then in season 4, I said, I'm going to take a step back. I'll be executive producer. I'm only going to work a couple hours a week on this. And I was told I would work for like 3 months, very part-time, just kind of sign off on episodes, maybe a little commentary here and there. And other people would be doing all of the editing and production. And it ended up being like super hands-on. I was really making those scripts happen. And the production support that I was told would be there wasn't. And then it took a full year to make. While I was working a full-time job, I was super pregnant, stressed out for a lot of other reasons, health issues going on. My cat was like slowly dying of cancer. And I just, you know, and this year is in the course of also planning my wedding and honeymoon and bachelor party and being sick and whatever. That was a really, really hard year. And for a while I was like, I don't want to hear the word podcast ever again. Like, it came out like right before I gave birth, and I was like, I'm so done. Like, I had such a stressful pregnancy. And, you know, I'm proud of everything I made. I'm happy for all the experiences. I don't want to take anything back. Like I said, I want to really focus on what I loved about it. But I feel like I did a lot. And I'm done. And like, to bring it back to 2008 and those YouTube videos, that's where I think I'm going now. So, in the words of the Gorillas, my future is coming on. It's coming on. I have no idea what the next video will bring. I had no idea what this video would bring. I know if you started following me to watch me play the bass, you're like, why aren't you playing the bass? Why are you sort of talking about playing the bass? I'm sorry, I might play the bass in a future video. But I'm gonna make more, and, you know, let's all lean into the next era of our lives and figure it out together and flail and be messy and think back on what we loved about our past ones and what we're gonna love about this new one. And I love you. All right, thanks for hanging out. See you soon.